All right, let's jump right in. We're about to unpack a way of looking at one of life's biggest questions, an idea that's so foundational it might just change how you see everything, from the very ground under your feet to the constant march of time itself.
You know, this is the question, isn't it? It's the one that hits us when we're facing loss or confusion, or even just in a quiet moment alone. If there's a grand designer who's supposed to be both good and all-powerful, then why does the design seem to include so much hurt? Well, the source material we're digging into today offers a very specific, and I think you'll find, a really compelling answer.
So the whole argument kicks off by basically flipping our biggest assumption completely upside down. It suggests that maybe our whole lives we've been getting the purpose of this place wrong. It says, this world, it isn't our final stop.
It's a preparation, a training ground. And see, with just that one little shift in perspective, everything changes. The rules of reality, suddenly they're not so random or cruel. They start to look like a curriculum, one that's designed for us to grow.
Okay, so if this place is a school, what are we learning? Well, that brings us to our first big idea: the laws that train. The argument here is that the physical laws of the universe aren't just these cold, uncaring forces. They're actually our first and our most consistent teachers. Let's break this down a bit. Think about it. Every time a toddler takes a step, wobbles, and falls, that's a direct lesson from gravity about balance and consequence. And then there's thermodynamics. You know, the universe's natural slide towards chaos, which teaches us that if you want to create anything of value, whether it's a clean room or a strong relationship, it's going to take real effort. And even pain, from this point of view, is actually a merciful teacher. It's like a built-in alarm system that yells, "Hey, don't touch that hot stove," to protect us from something way worse. And this quote from the source material, man, it just nails the whole point. You see, our own conscience can be kind of shaky, right? We can talk ourselves into almost anything. But the physical world, it gives instant, unbiased feedback. You can argue with your conscience, but you can't argue with gravity.
So what about the Eden story? Well, this perspective suggests that when humanity decided to go its own way, the laws of the universe didn't suddenly get tougher, gravity didn't get stronger. What changed was our relationship to the system. It's like we went from working with the design to fighting against it. So the curse wasn't some new set of harder rules, it was just a warning. Hey, life is going to get a lot harder if you try to fight the system.
All right, let's move on to our next section, which builds on this in a really kind of counterintuitive way. The idea is called limits as mercy, and it proposes that the very things we complain about, decay, running out of things, and time itself, are actually some of the system's most profound features of protection.
Now, just stop and think about this for a second. A world without decay sounds pretty great at first, right? But then you realize, in a place like that, evil could become permanent. A tyrant could rule for thousands of years. A lie would never die. But in our world, everything has a shelf life. Time itself contains the damage. The worst people are eventually stopped, if not by justice, then simply by the clock running out.
And it's not just decay. Think about space and time as these invisible guardrails. Space puts physical distance between us, which can give anger a moment to cool off before it turns into action. Time only moves forward, which forces us to make choices and decide what's important, instead of being stuck in the past. The bottom line is, these limits we often hate are actually what protect us from ourselves.
And believe it or not, this same logic is even applied to how long we live. The source frames a shorter lifespan not as a punishment, but as a carefully measured act of mercy. 120 years, it's long enough to learn, to love, to change your mind, but it's short enough to put a hard limit on the amount of damage any one person can do. So, we have the system, we have the rules, we have the training ground, but this is where the whole narrative reaches its absolute climax. What happens when the architect of the whole system decides to come down and walk the course himself?
I mean, that is just such a powerful line. The whole idea is that in the person of Jesus, the very mind that thought up gravity and time and biology willingly put himself under their control. He got tired, he felt pain, and he lived inside the same tough physical laws as everyone else.
So what about miracles then? How do they fit into all this? Well, they're not seen as just magic tricks that break the rules for no reason. Instead, they're framed as demonstrations of ultimate authority. It's like the designer pulling back the curtain for a second to say, look, these laws are real and they're good for now, but they're temporary, and ultimately, they answer to me.
The source points to really specific examples. Calming a storm shows authority over weather. Healing the sick shows authority over biology and decay. And the resurrection? Well, that's presented as the final, ultimate proof, the big one.
It's a statement that even death, the most basic rule of our physical world, doesn't get the last word. It's the ultimate proof that this whole system of physics isn't the final authority. So, where does that leave us? Let's pull all these threads together now and look at the final big picture conclusion of this whole way of thinking.
When you look at it this way, the universe is a purpose-built stage. It's an arena designed specifically for beings who have free will, a place where our choices actually matter and where consequences are the main way we learn. And most importantly, it's a place where love can be shown in its most powerful form, through sacrifice.
And this is really the bottom line. This world, with all of its struggles and its pain and its limits, is not the final product. It's not supposed to be perfect forever, but for its very specific job, as a training ground, a place for us to choose, and a place for redemption, it is perfectly designed for right now.
And that, of course, leaves us with one last massive question to think about. If this entire, vast, complicated universe really is a training ground, then what in the world is it training us for?